Hello, my name is Andrew Garrett from the Langham Hotel, and we're going to make the rolled into one cake, which is a Japanese sponge filled with a mascarpone cream and strawberries. So now we're going to make the meringue for the Japanese roll sponge. First thing is obviously to pour the egg whites into the machine. And then what we're going to do is we're going to whisk the egg whites, get a very light foam on them before we start adding the sugar. If you add the sugar too early, what tends to happen is don't get as much air into the meringue because you haven't enabled the proteins to open up enough. As we're whisking the egg whites, we're going to whisk them on a medium speed. The reason why that we whisk it only on a medium speed is to create a much more elastic texture, and a texture that when we fold the meringue into the final recipe, we're going to get something much more resistant to the mixing. So here you can see the egg whites have a light foam to them. They've increased in volume, and now it's ready to add the sugar gradually. So the meringue's now ready. So now the meringue's ready, you can see there's some nice elastic peaks to it, and we're ready to add it to the cream. So here's the basis of the sponge mix. It's a very similar recipe to the cream that we're actually using it to fill. We've just got the egg yolks, the sugar that we just need to dissolve in the eggs to make sure that we don't have any lumps. There, the sugar's just dissolved. Just add in the flour. Now the flour is dissolved in, we're ready to add it to the boiling milk. So now we're going to boil the milk, sponge base. We're going to bring the milk with the butter this time to the boil. Once the butter and the milk have started to boil, the butter completely dissolved and the milk starting to rise to the top, we're going to add the eggs, the sugar and the flour into the mix and just cook it out very quickly. So it's important to very quickly get the whisk in, otherwise you will get lumps in the mix. Now the mix is cooked out and now we're ready to add the meringue. So we've transferred the hot cream into a bowl. Our meringue is ready, and we're just going to add a small amount of the meringue into the mix. The reason why we do this is to make the two textures similar. It will just help in the final mixing that we don't get any lumps, and also it will help to mix quicker, meaning we'll lose less volume as we do so. So now this mix, we're going to add it into the egg whites, and we're going to finish the folding process. And obviously the quicker that we can fold in, the more volume that we'll keep. So there you see, the texture of the sponge is ready now to spread onto the tray. So we've just got a tray lined with a silicone mat. We're going to put some of the mix onto this tray. And there, the sponge is ready to bake in the oven. While the sponge is baking, we're going to make the filling, which is the muslin cream. The first step is to mix the eggs with the sugar and the flour. Something that's very important when you're making this cream, a very important step, is that you always mix the sugar and the eggs first. What's very important is that the sugar dissolves in the egg. If we don't dissolve the sugar in the eggs, then the sugar will absorb the moisture of the eggs, and what you'll be left with is the lumps of fat that are left in the egg yolk that don't ever disappear, so you'll have a very lumpy cream. Then we add the flour, and in here we've got a mix of corn flour and flour, so that it gives us a thickening agent as well as an agent that will give a little bit of elasticity to the mix. And then we're ready just to add it to the milk. Now we're going to boil the milk for the base of the cream. So we're going to pour the milk in and bring it to the boil. Now, while the milk's boiling, I'm just going to explain about the gelatine. The gelatine that we're using is a powder that we've added water to. So our base recipe for our gelatine mass, as we call it, is 1 gram of powder for 5 grams of water. So the milk is boiling, the gelatine is ready there, and we're just going to take our eggs, sugar and flour that we mixed earlier, and as the milk comes to the boil, we're going to pour directly the eggs, the flour into the mix and the sugar into the mix, leaving the heat still on, and we're just going to whisk that into our cream, and you can see that it's going to thicken very, very quickly to give us something that resembles a traditional pastry cream. So now the pastry cream is cooked, we're going to drop in the gelatin, turn off the heat and just dissolve the gelatin in the mix. Now all the gelatin's dissolved, the cream is cooked, we're ready to put it into a container. So now the cream has cooled down to 40 degrees. You'll see that we've put a cling film on top, and this cling film is just to stop any skin forming on top of the cream, which will as well create a lumpy texture, grainy texture in the cream. So the cream's at 40, our butter is just slightly softened. We're going to add it into the cream and just whisk it in. Now, this is something that can do the day before you need this cream. And once this butter's dissolved into the cream, we're just going to put it in the fridge, and it can be left overnight or within a couple of hours it's ready to use. So now the sponge has come out of the oven, we've left it to cool, and we've just trimmed it to the size that we need to make our first roll. We've got the base of our muslin cream here that we just need to add some mascarpone. We're going to whip it to get the right texture. We're just going to put a small amount onto the sponge. And just leaving about a centimetre gap at one side. Then some strawberries that have been just washed, quartered. I'm going to run along the middle. You can just roll it as is. But what we do at the Langham is that we just pipe a homemade marmalade made with zests of orange, lemon and lime. We just spread 2 lines on the sponge, and what this marmalade will do will just give a kick of acidity, just to make sure that the sponge, when you eat it, doesn't feel too rich, too overpowering. So this is ready now just to roll. And it's not going to be like a traditional Swiss roll where we have lots of layers within the sponge. It's just going to be rolled once over, and then we're going to set it in the fridge. So here's the sponge that we've just set in the fridge. Nice and round and reasonably tight. We're just going to cut it into our portions and then pipe the remaining cream that we had from the muslin cream. You'll see we'll decorate the cake with that, and then just decorate it with some strawberries. We're using the cream that we use in the filling, but you can quite easily use just a whipped cream. We're just going to finish 3 of them off, then we're going to fill in with the cream. So we're just going to pipe a few different sized dots on each one. Very fresh, hopefully full of flavour. Here we have a strawberry rolled into one.